Alright, I've got the doors up here on the sawhorses ready to go. This is all the associated hardware that came with it. It looks a little bit intimidating, but it's really not. So I'm just going to step through it one at a time. But check this out, I mentioned in the last clip that someone needed to pierce a hole in that. This one came with one, so I can put a lock on it. My problem solved. I guess they heard me before I opened up the box. Can't beat that deal. Alright, well, I'm going to get these cable brackets installed here. There's definitely a left and a right. And lining up to these holes, it looks like I can put 3 of these zip screws in. Alright, I'm getting ready to install the hinges, but I wanted to point these out. These are number 1s, these are number 2s, and these are number 3s, and they stair step up in height. The roller will go here in this one, here in this one, and here in this one. That way, when the door opens up, it actually pulls itself away from the jamb as it's opening. And then this one goes on the very top, and it's adjustable. So on the first section here, which is the bottom, it will get all number 1s all the way across it. And then on the second section, it'll get a number 2 on the top with number 1s all in the center. So there's a lot more number 1s than 2s, 3s, etc. And they all are marked with arrows indicating which way they go, pointing up. Alright, I've got this first panel sitting in here. I set it in the opening and centered it side to side, and then I took some 3.5 inch long nails, drove them in by the edge and kind of tapped them around to secure the door. And then at that point I put a level on it to make sure it was level, and it was in my case, but if it was not, then I would shim under each side of the door accordingly and level the door out. So now that I've got this secured on here, I'll prepare the next section with a number 2 hinge on each end and number 1s in the 3 stiles in the center. I'll set it, put the nails in just like I had done here, and then I'll fold these hinges up and secure them to that panel, and I'll just move my way up. Okay, I've got the top roller bracket installed and loosened up so I can make the final adjustments after it's installed. I've also installed this strut. I definitely want one on the top of the door since it's going to have a door opener on it to stiffen this up so it doesn't just buckle in. And I've installed it with these Tech screws. The door actually came with a strut, and I bought an extra to put up here. I was supposed to put one down on that second panel, but I forgot. So I'll have to hold it up there and put it on after the fact. No big deal. Okay, I've got the last section secured up there. I've got all my rollers installed where they go. Most of what I've seen is people put these cables on after they put on the vertical track and get down in the little slot with a screwdriver and try to monkey this thing over that pin. I just put mine on in advance and ran it down the door to get it out of my way, making sure the cable was on top of this bottom roller. So when I come in and put the track, it'll be there and ready. So I'm at the point where I'm going to install the vertical track now, and then we'll move on. Alright, I'm preparing my vertical track sections here, installing these brackets. They're numbered 2. There's a shorter one and a longer one. Shorter one goes at the bottom, it's just hand tight. There's some track bolts that are serrated. They go up in there and they're more like a stud after you tighten them up. So tighten it up, loosen it up, and then I can manipulate this. This one's in the middle of the track, and I've also installed this flag bracket right here, which will be mounted to the wall on the top. Once I go to put this particular horizontal section in, this will sit just like this and secure these together. This will attach here, and then this bracket here will go on just like that and support the bearing or the pole here on the outside. So as far as installing it, I'll just line it up here at an angle and then just roll it around the back just like that. I'll be positioning it according to my instructions from the edge of the door to the edge of the track, 1/2 inch. Alright, well, I've got the horizontal track mounted on now. A couple bolts here to secure it. I moved it backwards and forwards to where this track was in line with the bottom one. A couple carriage bolts up here locking this bearing bracket on. and an additional lag bolt into the wall to secure it. So everything's nice and tight right now. It's level, it looks good. I didn't have to do anything down here with this bracing that was already here. Stuck in the bolt, tightened it up, good to go. So I'll shift over on the other side, get it installed. Then at that point I'm ready to install the springs, rod, everything else, and torsion it up. The final thing I did on this side was adjust this bracket here. Just held the door to the jamb and then brought this roller out to where it just contacted right here in this V, and then tightened them up. All right, well, I've got the other horizontal track installed, as well as put the strut on here and the latch. I've brought the cables up behind all these rollers and fished it out through the top. I'm getting ready to start putting this mechanism together. But my lighting condition is really poor again, so I'm having to shoot with a lamp. But this is the basic setup here. I'm gonna have a drum on this end, a spring towards the middle, this carrier bracket, that bearing, that spring. These will get sandwiched together with these bolts, and then another one drum on the other end. Now these are marked for color. Red goes on the left, as well as the end of this spring is marked with red, and black goes on the right. All right, well, I need to locate the position of this center bracket on the wall where it's going to be mounted, and the way I'm going to do that in its vertical orientation is to measure up to the center of that bearing up there, and then once I get everything up here, I'll hold it up to the center of it, that way mark my holes and put in my lag bolts. The in and out, I'll go ahead and get that measurement from the wall out to the center of that bearing, because it does have a slide here where you can adjust it in and out, and you want this tube to be straight all the way across there, not bent in any way. All right, well, I've got the center bracket, springs, everything installed up there. I've taken this pair of vice grips, clamped it on the pipe, and rested it on the wall. I'm at the stage now where I'm putting my cables in on the drums, and I'm going to wind it up onto the drum and then lock these set bolts here. So there it is. I'm going to put a little tension on it to tighten this cable up, making sure everything is still there. And then I'm going to run these in just till they contact by hand, and then taking a wrench, a half a turn is all I'm going to do on these. Well, there's one of them. Quarter. And a half. These vice grips ensure that this cable stays where I put it. Now I'll move to the other side and do it the exact same way. All right, well, I'm getting ready to wind up these torsion springs, and a good rule of thumb to use is for every foot of door you have, it's one complete turn of a spring. In my case, it's 7 foot, so 7 turns, and you can add a quarter to a half. So I'm going to be working in quarter turns, so I'm going to be doing 28 and a quarter turns, and if I need to add another quarter, I'll do it. So 28 and a quarter and 28 and a quarter, making sure I wind them both up equally. I'm going to do the first couple of turns by hand. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And at that point, I'll go ahead and stick in one of my winding bars. So now I'm at 8 turns. So I'll go ahead and count off the rest of them to 28 and a quarter, and then I'll lock the spring in. But before I lock it in, I'm going to stretch the spring a little bit. After I get it all wound up, I'm going to hold some tension this way on my bar, and I'm going to knock the spring over a little bit to take some of the tension off these windings so it doesn't bind, and then I will lock it in. All right, well, I've got this side adjusted and locked up. Stretch the spring just a little amount. One thing that I'm going to do before I take this winding bar out is go ahead and pull down on it and make sure the door is wanting to lift and this is not slipping. And you can see the door coming up. So now I know it's safe to take this out rather than these maybe not biting in good enough or being tightened up enough and this thing unwinding on you. So this side's looking good. I'll do the other one and then we'll be ready to test the balance on it. Okay, well I've got my turns on it. I've removed my vice grips. So we're gonna see if it is balanced. Oh, it's heavy. Yeah, it's still too heavy. At any point I stop the door, it should stay at that level. Now this door had an extra strut put on as well as I had it insulated with this foam and this vinyl on the back, evidently adding some weight. So what I'm going to do now is I will put my vice grips back on and I'll bring these up maybe a half turn on one and a half turn on the other and I'll check it again. When I get it close, then I'll move in quarter turn increments and get it perfect. Alright, well I got it balanced as good as I'm going to get it. I actually had to put, I was going to go a half turn on each because it was so heavy. I ended up going 3/4 of a turn on each. So now I can raise it up to the midpoint. And it stays right there. Take it out one more. Stays right there. Of course, all the way up. That's about as good as I can get it. I don't think I could ask for any better. So that completes the installation of the door itself. I need to install some weather stripping on the outside and then move on to the opener. Alright, well I've made some adjustments to the door, the track itself. The instructions said to keep it tight up against this right here when you adjust the track, but everything I see online, they're using like a 1/4 inch gap here and then putting on the weather seal. So I've adjusted the track to give myself a 1/4 inch all the way down to the bottom. And then I'm getting ready to install this weather stripping. I'll do the top first. And then I'll push it up to the door to where this comes across at like a 45-degree angle. And then I'll nail it on. Alright guys, I've got the weather seal installed. Everything's looking good. This is the way I ended up doing this corner. This one ran straight in all the way out to here. And then I cut this one at an angle. I marked that angle with it pushed all into place, so when it closes it'll form a nice corner right here. I had to relieve the back a little bit and in essence cope it to where this would fit up flat. So when it closes, it pushes this seal out. Because it's behind, it pushes that one out and it makes for a nice sealed corner right here. Alright guys, here's a quick shot of the after. It's 100% wrapped up. A huge improvement over the door that was in it. It really was not that difficult to do in the hole. Alright guys, well I'm working on the installation of the opener now. This is a Craftsman 1/2 horsepower opener. I needed to put one in my rental property a while back, so these things were on some great sale. I think it was like $113, so I snatched up two, knowing full well I was going to need one here. So I've got it unboxed at this point. Just followed the instructions to put it together. I need to hang the bracket up on the header up there and then start putting this in place. Alright guys, I got the opener installed. There was really no point in showing this. It's all in the manual anyway. The only thing I really did different is I didn't want wires running all down the ceiling for the light sensors as well as the switch on the wall. So you can see I've pierced a hole here up in the ceiling and I brought all the wires down and around and cable tied it to make it look really clean. And then over here, I just pierced a hole in the ceiling and then ran the wire down all the way down to the sensor. It's been adjusted, everything's been checked, safeties, all that jazz. Seems to work just fine. One more checkbox checked.